Why, good evening. Welcome to the AM broadcast. Today we are covering the story of Rumpelstiltskin, and I have to say, what a show! So stay tuned. Once there was a miller who was poor but had a beautiful daughter. Now it happened that he had to go speak to the king. In order to make himself appear important, he said to him,
I have a daughter who spins straw into gold.
Then the king replied,
This is an art that pleases me well. If your daughter is as clever as you say, bring her tomorrow at my palace, and I will view what she can do.
And when the girl was brought to him, he took her to a room that was quite full of straw, gave her a spinning wheel, and said,
Now set to work, and if by tomorrow morning you have not spun this straw into gold, you must die.
Thereupon he himself locked the room and left her in there alone. So there sat the poor miller's daughter, and for the life she had could not tell what to do. She had no idea how straw could ever be spun into gold, and she grew more and more miserable until the last she began to weep. But all at once the door opened, and in came a little man and said,
Good evening, Mistress Miller. Why are you crying so?
I have to spin straw into gold, and I do not know how to do it.
And what will you give me? And if I do it for you?
My necklace.
Answered the girl. The little man took the ring again and began to turn the wheel, and by morning had spun all the straw into glittering gold. Another whir, 3 times around, and the second was full as well. And so went until the morning, and when the straw was spun, all the reeds were full of gold. By daybreak the king was already there, and he saw all the gold, and he was astonished and delighted, but his heart became full of greed. He had the miller's daughter taken into another room, full of straw, which was much larger, and commanded her to spin that also in one night, if she valued her life. The girl knew not of how to help herself, and began to cry and weep. When the door began to open, the little man appeared and said,
What will you give me if I spin that straw into gold for you?
The ring on my finger.
Said the girl. The little man took the necklace, seated himself in front of the wheel, and whir, 3 turns, and the reed was full. The king rejoiced beyond measure at the sight, but he had not have enough gold, and he had the miller's daughter taken to a much larger room full of straw, and said,
You must spin this as well, but if you succeed, you shall become my wife. If you are a miller's daughter, I cannot find a richer wife in this land.
When the girl was alone, the mannequin came in for a 3rd time and said,
What will you give me if I spin the straw for you this time also?
I have nothing left that I could give.
Then promise me, if you should become queen, your first child.
Who knows whether that will ever happen?
Thought the miller's daughter, and not knowing how else to help herself in this strait, she promised the mannequin what he wanted and what she was going to offer him. And when the king came in that very morning, all that was found was what he wished. He took her in marriage, and the pretty miller's daughter became a queen. A year after, she had such a beautiful daughter, and she had never thought of the mannequin, but suddenly he came into the room and said,
Now give me what you promised.
The queen was in horror struck, and offered the mannequin all the riches in the kingdom if he had just leave her alone with her child. But the mannequin said,
No, something that is living is dearer to me than all the treasures in the world.
Then the queen began to weep and cry, so the mannequin pitied her.
I will give you 3 days' time. If by that time you find out my name, then you shall keep your child.
So the queen thought the whole night of all the names she could have ever thought of. And she sent messengers over to the country to inquire, far and wide, for any other names that there might be. When the mannequin came the next day, she began with Casper, Malachor, Balazar. She thought all the names she had ever knew, one after the other, but every try, the mannequin said.
That is not my name.
On the 3rd day, the messenger came back and again and said, You may think how glad the queen was when she heard the name, and as soon afterwards the little man came in and asked,
I have not been able to find a single new name, but as I came to the high mountain at the end of the forest, where the fox and the bird meet each other at good night, there was a little house, before the house fire was burning, and round about the fire quite a ridiculous little man was jumping. He hopped on one leg and shouted,
Today I bake, tomorrow brew, the next I'll have the young queen's child. Ha! Glad I am that no one knew, that Rumpelstiltskin I am styled.
You may think how glad the queen was when she heard the name, and as soon afterwards the little man came in and asked,
Now, Mistress Queen, what is my name?
Is your name Conrad?
That is not my name.
Is your name Harry?
That is not my name.
Perhaps your name is Rumpelstiltskin.
The devil has told you that. The devil has told you that.
cried the little man, and in his anger he plunged his right foot into the deep of the earth, and his whole leg went in, and in rage he pulled his left leg so hard that with both hands he tore himself in two.